Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, on your screen, and fabulous good morning to the United States, good afternoon in that time zone, and good evening to the German audience. And we are really happy to have Graham, who calls himself sometimes Dr. G, for the third time, if I did not miscount. And I'm grateful, as it's always inspiring to touch base with him and starting an interesting, or at the start, probably very well educated discussion. And at a sudden, we are jumping into the real things, such as the human being in the middle of interest, and the empathy is coming along, drop. And it is about going into a bit of the history of how the development were, and that topic we strived at the beginning of this year already to a certain extent, but we found out that with a high motivated management consultant as Graham is, and one of the takeaways I catch up from Thomas is, he is very educated. He has always some quote he can make, and he knows his stuff. And I said, on some end, he can be very British.
And then there is one more.
Whatever that means.
Abusing a quote, he's following the data.
Yeah. And it was so interesting that I was catched by the instance, as all the experiences Graham has from automotive, from airlines, from banks, insurance companies, and that on how things are developing over the ages, and it is ages, that it is still the thing which makes us tick, such as we are still the product as human beings, or we are not the real treat in the way of that we are appreciated and that we get what we originally probably wanted. Now, by saying this, we come from the customer experience to the me experience. I was quitting my properly prepared introduction now, but what we would like to do in the next hour is have a nice chat, deliver to you, our audience, an entertaining and entertaining hour, and we would like to invite you, as you have the opportunity either in your favorite Facebook account or LinkedIn or YouTube to make live comments. And this is the beef in our work, as we love to integrate you with your comments into our conversation. Now, Graham, over to you. What did I leave out in your reputation and the 30 years of being very enthusiastic and very engaged in the rights for customers, or what's doing or done with the data in the positive or the negative?
Okay, first of all, thanks for having me on again. It's always a pleasure to be here. And there's so much to talk about. I don't think you left much out initially. I mean, things have evolved over time. CM evolved into CEX, or customer experience management, as it was originally. CEX is now going through evolutionary stages as well. So MEX, so my experience, or me in charge, rather than you in charge, you the company, is just an evolutionary step beyond where we were before. So it's not that radical, but it is radical in one way, in that the customer is now at the center of the control of what data they share, who they share it with, and for what purposes, and what do they want to get in return, rather than companies, which has been the case up till now. So it's not going to revolutionize anything overnight, like nothing ever does. No matter if everybody was using MEX in the future, they'll still be using CEX and CEM like they are today. It's just another evolutionary step. It's quite a big step, with as I said, moving from hegemony of the company to hegemony of the customer, which is quite a big thing.
When, in your opinion, did CX become separate from CRM? I mean, to begin with, CeX, as I remember it, was just a term to differentiate newer CRM products from older CRM products, and customer engagement management was another attempt to step away from that acronym. When did they become materially different?
Okay, so that's a good question, and I don't think there's a definitive answer, but here's my answer. Before that, I will look a little bit at where CRM came from. So back in the late 80s, must have been the early 90s, when I worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers in the UK. We were all busy sharing papers from Gartner. And those papers were about two things: technology-enabled selling, tests, and technology-enabled relationship marketing. This was the big thing, how we are using data and technology to automate selling, and to automate marketing, or relationship marketing as it was called at the time. And CRM came out of those two things. Over a period of time, people stopped talking about test and term. I started talking about customer relationship management, but it wasn't about customers. It wasn't about relationships. Customers don't want relationships with companies by and large. They don't even care about brands by and large. There's a piece of research from Liliander and Roos a few years ago, 2003, I think it was, looking at spurious versus true relationships, and they found that less than 5% of customers had anything that you might consider to be a true relationship with a company. And where they did, it was almost invariably with a person who was going the extra mile for them, not with the company. And as I said a second ago, customers don't even care about brands all that much either in many ways. So there's some Havas research, I think the latest iteration was 2021, where they asked customers about brands, and the message they got was that customers would either not notice or easily replace 75% of brands if they disappear tomorrow. So, the message out of that is customers care about themselves. So CRM was always about data and technology. It wasn't about customers. It wasn't about relationships. And there's nothing wrong with that. It worked, and it's all about management of data, management of customers. But I think what happened is in the late 90s, and I'd always looked at the academic literature around service management, work by people like Christian Grönroos in Scandinavia, and Ruth Bittner in the USA, and others, looking at what the latest thinking was about customer interactions and episodes, abundance of interactions, and what we now call experiences. That's been around since the 1980s. But I think in 1997, from memory, there was a pivot event, a big event, and that was the publication of The Experience Economy by Pine and Gilmore. And I remember, because there was an article the previous year, I think in 1996 or whatever, in the Harvard Business Review, was talking about their research that led to the experience economy. Then a year later, the book came out, and I was on holiday in the south of France, and every morning I'd ration myself one chapter of the book. I didn't want to read before my family got up, before I was making coffee in the kitchen, and because it was such a revolutionary thing, and it's such a mind-bending thing, it brought together all the things I'd learned over the previous 10, 15, 20 years, looking at service quality and service research, into one coherent framework around the customer experience. So the customer experience, amalgamating marketing, so building awareness and driving intent to buy, and sales, closing the deal, lead management, closing the deal, onboarding afterwards, and then customer service afterwards, into one coherent package called CEM, or Customer Experience Management. And of course, that became Customer Experience, or CX. So there's a downside, I think, which I've always thought of. So, because I spent so many years looking at service quality, looking at how do we design services that provide quality to customers, and all the work around customer satisfaction and all those things as well. Then what I noticed was that Pine and Gilmore's emphasis was on theatrical experiences, which has now become memorable experiences, rather than providing high quality service, because that's what customers come for. They don't come for experiences. Right. Even Harley Davidson and McDonald's and even at Disney. They don't necessarily come for the experiences; they come for service. So, giving competence and capabilities for the benefit of another. Service, we exchange service for service. So customers come for service, but all emphasis is on theatrical consumption, theatrical experiences. And the example they use, which I think is a good one, is coffee drinking. So I can buy coffee beans and grind them myself. I can go to a box standard Mac cafe to get a coffee, which is pretty adequate. Or I can go to the Café Florian in the Piazza di San Marco in Venice, where a cappuccino costs $18. But it is the premier
And count the
location.
way of travel, yeah, and the expense you have to take to go there.
You're sitting in a wonderful location in the piazza, watching all the tourists go by, with classical music in the background. So you're buying the experience, not really buying the coffee. Although the coffee is very good. I've been past it many times, but never actually had a coffee there. Why? Because it's full of tourists. Taking photos to show that I had coffee at the Café Florian in Venice. So, and Barney Gilmore said, you pay much more for the experience, which is probably true, but most customers don't come for the experience. If you go to your bank or your telco or to a car dealership, you don't go for the experience. By and large, you go for its service. So my challenge with the experience economy is that because it recognized that the experiential element was potentially more economically valuable, that they focused on that element and missed out completely all of the previous 30 years of research, really good stuff on providing quality service. What do we see today? We see people talking about memorable experiences, but when you go to your bank or your telco or almost anywhere, or your airline today, you receive memorable experiences for all the wrong reasons. Why? Because the service is crap. And we look back to the 1970s models again. We look back to the Servcall model or the GAPS model. So Servcall, 5 factors, a rater model. Things around reliability. Does it actually work? Many times it doesn't work. You have to do a lot of, and increasingly you have to do the work yourself. You go to the supermarket and you have to check out yourself with really poorly designed supermarket experiences sometimes or services.
Let me dig in right there, Graham, please. So if you are saying poorly designed experiences, a word which I hate there, by the way, because you do not design my experience, there's this great long queue at the checkout, this clerk who is disgruntled and scans the stuff, yet Amazon failed with their totally automated stores. Why? Where does this dichotomy come from?
It's a good thing. I think I don't know details about Amazon stores. I was reading an article about it the other day, and the suggestion was that I think Amazon Fresh, I think it's called. Although the automated part worked quite well, so you walk in, you pick up items, you put them into your basket, your trolley, whatever. The device knows what you've taken on only just leave, and you get a bill. But the message that I read out of this article, this that I read, was 2 things. First of all, the selection of material was really, really low quality. A lot of Amazon own brands that weren't very good. Not much choice, not many SKUs in the shop. So you go into a shop with very limited choice, stuff that you don't want. And the second, the other message I got was that getting the bill, getting the receipt took ages. And so you didn't really know what you'd bought until some days, in this case, days later. So 2 things that in my mind, if you, as location and assortment is really key in retailing, certainly supermarket, small scale supermarket retailing. If you don't have a very good assortment, how would you go there?
So what you would suspect is that if they had chosen a couple of Whole Food branches, which Ralph may or may not know, which is a high-end food retailer that is owned by Amazon, by the way, that this would have worked better.
I don't really know. I mean, it's an automated thing. So I've been to a Whole Foods branch in Piccadilly Circus in London. There's one just around the corner in Eyre Street in the past, and it was very nice. The material, the products on offer were really top class, but very expensive. So you might want to pay more for the really high quality, But again, they're competing with, around the corner, the Tesco Metro and the local Sainsbury's, which provide standard products, really good quality products, things that you'd find in a large scale Tesco or Sainsbury, but at normal prices. So
price you can actually
I don't think that would drive success for Amazon. I mean, I think there were probably logistical and operational challenges that caused problems, but I don't know the details. I've never been to an Amazon impression. I've even seen one, so I'm just talking what I've read recently.
Yeah, what I heard is that they weren't really accepted, but they're the selection of SKUs might have taken might have been a good part of it.
The automation part is quite common now. So you go to, I think, like 40% of customers now self-checkout in their supermarket. Although there are challenges, because obviously pilferage or losses are higher with self-checkout. And I read an article the other day that showed you sort of 10 ways to cheat the system and to steal food, basically. It wasn't as advising to do it, of course. It was saying these are the things that you need to be aware of when you've got a self-checkout system. So what we now see is that you have people there present watching you, or in some cases you have limits to how many items you're allowed to take to the self-checkout, which is sort of rather defeats the effect to a certain point. And these aren't always well designed either. So I know my local Aldi one. Go to Aldi shopping a lot. One of them has a self-checkout area. Technology doesn't always work very well. The way you put your 10 items on a weight, weighs them, knows what's there as you scan them through and put them on another side. So it works out whether there's anything that's there or not there. But if you wanted to, it's easy to cheat the system. You just put something in your hand and put it on, and then back it up without putting it onto the other side at all. But it doesn't always work. The technology doesn't always work properly. There's a cashier next door that someone shouts over what you need to do to make it work. So it's a little bit retail theatre, really, rather than just going and shopping efficiently and effectively.
Let's get a little back into fundamentals. So what you said a bit earlier is that there is an evolution to empowering the customer, which sounds awfully familiar to me. Last time I really heard that term was the customer is in control with the advent of social media. Why? And apparently, well, we know the result, right? So why should that change now? Why would businesses that didn't change in forever change now?
So it's a very good question, and there has to be a solid operational economic argument behind that. So what I see is that over time, companies have gathered more and more data. And they've done it legally generally, but also sometimes not quite so legally, as we see in multiple court cases. For example, I think it is GM in Texas is being sued by the state attorney. I could be wrong on that, of course. But the gist of the court case is that they were taking data from connected vehicles that they had not asked for permission for, and that was illegal under whatever data protection legislation is in place in Texas. And there are other cases now for Kia and other companies coming along as well. So companies have always taken data, but they haven't always used it to customers' best interests. And so I remember working for a UK telco on GDPR when I ran part of the early part of the GDPR program. We had a fantastic lawyer from Simmons & Simmons working with a real world expert in data protection law. And he told a wonderful story about one of the products of the company was called Wave, the telco, and it allowed you to do effectively retargeting, marketing based on your location, the things they know about you. And he was showing us with great glee how on the train on the way to the offices of the telco, he'd received a message offering him women's lingerie. And I said, this is interesting. I think, is it anything you need to tell us? And he said, no, it's okay. But this was a complete inappropriate message. So a light-hearted example of how retargeting and what people call performance marketing often struggles. And the reason why it struggles is because they have lots of data about you. What I think of as the four types of data. First-party data about us, about you, we've gathered during interactions. Second-party data we've gathered from service partners like outsourced call centers. Third-party data from third parties like CDPs operated by advertising agencies and what have you. This was a big thing a few years ago. and also increasingly now fourth-party data, so data about the weather and other things that might be predictive. We know that weather drives moods and moods drives purchase behavior. So whether the third-party data might be predictive or support predictions of what you might buy. But it's all historical stuff by and large. It's all from things you did, and it's what I call the apples and pears problem. So if you're selling green apples, we have lots of data about your purchase of green apples, but we don't think about your purchase of red apples or bananas or non-fruits at all. So we've only got a small amount of data we need to understand your desires, your intentions, your immediate actions. We act upon that, and that could produce some rather curious results. So working for another telco, a different one in this case in the UK, on an NBA governance program, Next Best Action governance program, talked to one of the telco's staff members, and we looked on her account on the app as a staff member. She just bought a recent folding phone from Samsung, I think it was, only a month ago. It should have been in the welcome journey that the telco would have put in place. So we logged on, and she got two wonderful next best action offers, one for exactly the same phone, and one for another very, very similar phone, each with a price tag of, wait for it, £700. That wasn't for the cost of the phone, that was the cost of lost earnings because she was at the beginning of her contract. It was lost earnings to compensate the lost earnings. So next best action offered her the same phone she had and another similar phone that was completely and utterly inappropriate. But the NBA algo didn't know that she'd bought a new phone or didn't act upon that. And it was a next best action it could offer, but it was rubbish. So customers have got tired, I think, of receiving irrelevant stuff. Some of them go banner blind, so they don't pay any attention to the ads, the offers they get online. The difficulty with that is that, of course, they not only not to pay attention to the ads they see, but they don't pay attention to the screen furniture around that ad. So they ignore other things that might be useful, like service messages. Or they can, if they want to, under GDPR in the UK and in Europe, they can opt out under one of the articles. They can opt out of receiving any marketing at all. And all you can send them is service messages, no marketing on any circumstances.
Right.
So, companies over time have spoiled their own nest, if you like, what I think of as the tragedy of the marketing commons, to think about some of the earlier work that has been done. Now they're losing access to third-party cookies, which provide a lot of information. Contextual marketing is on the rise, so we need to get about your context, what you're trying to do right now, what are you doing, what's your job, where were you in that journey to get your job done. And of course, customers have all this data, but they've not given it to companies in the past because they know they're going to abuse it to send more relevant offers or not very high performance marketing, as I think about it. So the idea of CeX as an extension of CRM, which is still largely about the experience and management, not about customers per se. The idea of MEX is that as we're now losing access to third-party data, to cookies, the cookie deprecation. And this is the data we really need to be able to create really great marketing that's relevant to the customer at that moment in time when they're trying to get something done, probably using one of the products they've already bought from you. Then we need access to contextual data, that zero-party data that people talk about. So not the first, second, third, fourth party, but the zero-party data, the data that sits on your handset, the data that sits in your head, the data that sits in the things you want to do, that you don't tell companies, they discover after the fact, but you never tell them because they only abuse it. So if you can provide a way for customers to provide access to their intentions, provide insights about their behavior, and provide permission data for certain purposes with a certain value proposition, then this MEX idea becomes a great way for companies to get access to better data and data that's really useful in the now, rather than historical data which they have to try and work out what to do with. And of course, customers don't give these things for free. They want something in return. So they get access to personalized experiences, personalized services, or personalized communications, the least valuable probably, that helps them get their jobs done. And why is this important for customers and why is it important for companies? Well, because it's customers is obvious. They interact with companies to get their jobs done. And those sequence of interactions are the journeys they go on, and all the journeys add together the experience. So customers get their jobs done fast, easy, and better. And there was a bit of research a few years ago from Kuhn Powell and others, professor at, I think it's Northwestern University, although I could be wrong. And Kuhn did some, they spent, I think, a year's worth of online digital data from 5 categories. But they found that if you have your traditional campaigning, and it has a certain response rate, not particularly very high, because customers aren't in the market most of the time. If you use retargeting, so we think we know what you're trying to do, but we don't respond to you in the moment, that was 9 times better than traditional campaigning. But if we respond to you in the moment, in the knowledge of what you're trying to do, so we respond while you're trying to get your jobs done in real time, that was 44 times better than traditional and personalized campaigning. That's the size of the prize.
Is no longer a plastic card or a cardboard card. It's here in the app. It's in the phone. And I'm on the road, I'm in the supermarket, and it could be addressed in the moment I'm approaching with my typical problem, such as I have my shopping list in my system, in my smartphone, and I'm going through the shopping list. And one exercise which has been quite successful was done in Austria when they offered help for your shopping routine to get your lunch done. And they made suggestions such as you gave in your shopping list, or you said, I would like to cook that and that dish. And they send it you directly, go left, go right. They did redirecting in the supermarket to get the right stuff fast. Yeah.
That's old linear programming. Trouble and saves the problem that you have in operations research. But it's one example. If I'm on a calorie-controlled diet, then I might want to eat certain foods and avoid other foods. So they could give you insights, information about the things that you were purchasing or purchase normally. If I have things I buy regularly, we are promiscuous, but we're also habitual buyers. So we don't spend a lot of time thinking about what we're buying in the supermarket. We buy the same old things. We buy multiple yogurts and multiple brands of butter and whatever it may be. So it could provide guidance and help on those sorts of things. We can use an AI at the customer end, provide support and help in a whole variety of things. The possibilities are endless. But the key thing is, the customer has more today they have no control, other than yes, I like it or no, I don't. That doesn't mean they don't get value out of it. We'll talk about it in a second. But they don't have any direct control. What this allows you to do is to try and give them more control over what they provide and what value they get.
Which actually instantly leads back to this comment that is their comment that is there for quite a while now. The interesting part is the last sentence. So skipping the automated processes for me is missing flexibility. So isn't one key that, or should it be one key that businesses automate for the sake or for the help of customers and aren't? So basically that's the same as in the AI discussion right now. They are automating for efficiency, with efficiency being cheap for me.
Right.
Yeah, so it's multiple things I think in there. So think about the question the LinkedIn listener asked. If on my car hire app, or even on just my telephone more generally, it can provide information. It's a little packet of information that I can send, maybe via Bluetooth or maybe via another service, to the car hire company. Then it can provide you all the information you need digitally without me having to show you anything automatically. So it will give you my name and address and my contact details. It'll give you my driving license details, which are all now available digitally. I shouldn't need to show you these things anymore. With this simple technology, this is a really easy use case. You can automate that provision of information without ever having to share anything directly, and only for this purpose. So it's for the purpose of validating who I am, that I'm old enough to drive a car and I'd have a valid driving license. All you need to know is yes, in this case, and some information to go in your records. You don't actually need to see the driving license because the information is available to a validated source. But to go back to your other question about automation, back in 1990, Michael Hammer wrote a rather a very clever HBR article called, which basically had the title of "When Re-engineering Work, Don't Automate, Obliterate." And the message was, if you go to most companies, the processes they have in place were never really designed with efficiency, effectiveness, or productivity in mind. They sort of evolved over time. And as somebody made a new requirement, they got adapted and changed. So often, initially, looks like a very efficient house, but after a little while, it looks like a West Country hotel with an annex and additional buildings and a caravan park and a camping site as well. This mishmash of stuff. And Michael Hammer and James Champy, who wrote the Re-engineering the Corporation, which is a book that kicked off BPR in 1990, always said that you should try and work through and work out where there was waste in processes and remove it, because you don't want to automate waste, do you? Toyota talks about 8 different sorts of wastes, one of them being not using your staff properly, and a whole load of other ones. You can use structured approaches to identify waste and remove it. And then when you've done that, you can look for things that provide unnecessary variation, all the Six Sigma thinking, and remove that, because we don't want to have 101 different ways to be able to onboard. We want one way or 2 ways, or at best a good enough way that covers most people in many ways. You can have variations around that, of course, but you don't want to be automating lots of different ways, so remove variation. And then you need to say, okay, so we've removed waste, we've removed variation that we don't really need. So now we need to look for those processes that are carried out quite a lot of times, where there's a very high, I have to put this out of my head, there's a very high fixed cost. But if I can automate things, I can remove that fixed cost. So I drive a whole variety of improvements, and then I automate stuff. So I standardize it, I simplify it, because you don't want things that are really complicated, we can avoid it, and I centralize it, and automation provides that pathway. So a lot of companies, unfortunately, decided to automate what they had. So I worked with a UK bank, a Scottish bank a few years ago, implementing next best action and journeys around that. And they were a bit short of time, so what did they do? They automated all of the stuff they already had in place, much of which was a waste of time. And I said at the time, this is not really good, but they were short of time, they didn't have budget to do anything else. So just automated the stuff that was there rather than re-engineering it first, and then automating a simplified, standardized set of next best actions afterwards. I see similar things in discussion with RPA, robotic process automation, and of course now with Gen AI as well. But this is 1990s thinking. What happens every 10 years? BPR comes around again, or process improvement comes around again. Let's make things efficient. Let's make things effective. Let's make things productive. But the people who did the previous the round of BPR 10 years ago have all moved on. They all do something else now. Managers make all the same mistakes. And I've been through this 4 or 5 times now, because I was there in the start, working for a company called Oasis Group in the 90s when it really kicked off. I've seen the 90s, the noughties, the 10s, and the 20s. This is my 4th round now of BPR that I'm seeing, with people making the same mistakes.
What I would like to jump on before Thomas is going to the quote here again, which we have from one of our active, charming guests in the audience, is that the checking out stuff. I was interviewed why I didn't do the self-checkout in Rewe. And I'm going for my supermarket to take some money, because there I don't pay €4 for using the automatic cash driving and from an automatic teller machine. There is no service fee charged, and it is a lot faster. Me having a full cart, trying to fiddle around with a technology which is not properly working, is like in the old days when I had to do all my banking and was not given a reward. In the first years, I recall that I went to a funny name called Verbraucherbank, Consumers Bank, where they had Colani design terminals, which were not very nice to look at, but it was a self-service banking mechanism. And for each of the bookings you did by yourself, you got money, you got a reward. Yeah.
Reward. Yeah.
And I'm honestly missing in that what is going into what I would like to have as a me experience. Then
Yes.
somebody is encouraging me if I do the job, that I get not only a friendly smile, but also something I can live on, or I have a feedback, a monetary feedback.
Yeah, remember when we used to get interest on our accounts? Those were the good old days.
Indeed. No, you get. I mean, for a while we had negative interest rates, so you had any money in the account, you actually lost money and did it anyway. Put it in gold. It's not very huge amount in the meantime.
It's always the same. The businesses are very good at pushing the risk of banking business away from themselves. But this is an interesting idea.
User cases.
So, use cases. I would like to put a slight curveball at it. Use cases are a nice thing, but in how far do use cases making anything closer to customer experience, which is another curveball that we can come later to, by the way. Is there a correlation between it, using use cases and customer experience?
What a good question. So
is there a correlation between going via use cases and customer experience?
So to use a good expression during this, the word we need is yine. So ja und nein, yes and no. So a lot of use cases are a thing that companies create to create simple things to understand how customers work. And often that tends into sets of requirements that then go into a RFI, RFP used to buy new technology like MarTech. And what often happens is that, in my experience, I've been in this for 30 years now, both supply side and sell side, and also supporting vendors as well. Often IT creates use cases or creates requirements, use case and requirement spec, but they don't always involve business. So I remember taking part in a bid where it was very clear the business hadn't really been involved in doing a spec for a MarTech solution involving journey orchestration, journey analytics. So often what we get are use cases that are a little bit hypothetical. They get then turn into sets of requirements. And of course, then we get the Christmas tree problem whereby people say, I read an article on HBR, or I talked to somebody from a rival bank or rival company. They're doing all these amazing things. So maybe they watched a couple of the Bank of Australia and Pega talking about all the amazing things they've been doing using Pega Tech with millions of interactions with customers. They say, I want some of that. So whatever they're doing, I want some of that. And then we end up with this Christmas tree that Santa would be very happy with loads and loads of things on, even though I know and they know they don't have the capability in place to do most of these things. So we end up buying more tech functionality than we ever use because we haven't built out a capability in the background to keep pace with the tech. So that's the downside, but there's an upside as well. So for some years now, because I was trained in 2009 in Jobs to be Done by one of its inventors, Tony Ulwick, as part of a boot camp. I've used Jobs to be Done for the last 15 years, and now it's become second nature. I don't even think about Jobs to be Done anymore. I just done automatically. Like creating third normal form database architecture, relational databases, and when I used to work in that space in the past as well. I even do it today. I can look at a form and work it out in TR straight away. So if you look at customers' jobs, or alternatively staff jobs, say marketers' jobs, you can identify their key jobs to be done, the things that they want to get done and they're struggling with often. We can identify the things that are really important to them, the jobs that are really important, and jobs that are not very well satisfied. Then I can look at the desired outcomes for those jobs, and those things then get turned relatively easily into use cases. So a user's job to be done becomes a use case, but it's a real use case based on what your marketing people or your customer service people are really trying to do and struggling with. Not what they do, but what they're trying to do. And then those desired outcomes, how they measure success, then become your requirements to go into your RFI and your RFP. And they also then go into the prioritization of the requirements. So we're only looking for things that we're actually going to use, and we're not looking for things we're never going to use. And that can turn into a really powerful solution. So a few years ago, I worked on a JV between a Chinese BSS OSS, so business and operating system provider, for a Dutch telco. They were replacing all the Dutch telcos' operating business systems. My job was to create the requirement specifications for the marketing module. So the client, the Dutch telco, wanted Unico Affinium, which at the time was the leading marketing campaign management tool. And the provider, the Chinese company, had a solution that they said it was good enough for China, but it's good enough for you. But it wasn't really a Western solution. It was a Chinese solution built on completely different fundamental principles. And so they were at an impasse. My job was to try and resolve that impasse, which I did. The way that I did it was by talking to the marketing people in the marketing department of the telco. We went through a jobs analysis process to identify what they were trying to do and how they measure success. There's then become use cases and requirements. And then we ended up building a version of Unico Affinium only in the Chinese telco's BSS, but it only had in it the 40% or the 30% of things that the users really wanted to do. Not all the things that nobody ever wanted to do, but it was just part of the functionality anyway. And it only cost 20% of the cost of buying Unico Affinium. So you got a classic disruptive solution, provided 40% of the functionality at 20% of the cost, and designed by myself, who as an active marketer, professional marketer, such that when we talked to another partner of the Dutch telco, and I was there to support the sales team in case they had any technical questions, the marketers said, "This is amazing. This is the first time I've ever seen technology that looks like it's designed by a marketer." It was designed by me, but it wasn't my job to tell them that was the case. They bought it anyway because it was part of another BSS shift and lift. But the point is, if you understand users' jobs to be done and their desired outcomes, that can easily and quickly be turned into use cases based on what users are really trying to do, requirement specs based on how they measure success, not the nebulous list of stuff you get typically. And you end up having a hard conversation with the telco, with the Chinese supplier. It was easy because we're building stuff from scratch, so we built what they needed. We can have hard conversations with your supplier to say, "I don't need all this stuff because I'm never going to be able to use it. So I don't want to pay for a dime."
Yeah, I think that's the key, coming from the use cases, the user side of it, the jobs to be done. So that's where the correlation, the connection actually is between the dots experience, which I want to come to in a second, and user stories. So they need to be based upon what customer wants to do, not what I want to do on the customer. Which leads me to the second half of this comment. The experience itself is experienced by the customers, though. I would have avoided the quotes there personally. After removing of the quotes, I wholeheartedly agree. So the customer experience is controlled to 100% by the customer. Why do...
Really?
Well, it's CEX, right? Why do businesses and even vendors of technology still believe that they can control or better deliver an experience? They can engage with me and not more.
Precisely. So there's a whole variety of things in there, I think, Thomas. The key thing, I think, is we have jobs to be done, and we don't always have the resources, the knowledge, the skills, the experience, the tools to do those jobs. So we go to companies, typically, or others, to get access to those resources, and we exchange resources. I get resource, I get your knowledge, I get technology, I get other things. You get my data, my information, some of my money, maybe. So we exchange services. This is the foundation of service dominant logic that Weber was created in 2004. That completely reinvented service marketing academically, and now increasingly elsewhere as well. So we interact with companies to get access to resources. Companies provide those things in a structured, organized way. So it's true that only the customer creates their experience, but they co-create it together with the companies, provide all those resources and frameworks and technologies and tools that you go to companies to get access to help you get your jobs done. So although customers do create the experience, they co-create it with the companies. So what that means is, that's quite an important point. Yeah, go on.
However,
what that means is that, yes,
time lag. We got lags here. So today the connection has time lags. Sorry for that. The only thing that the companies can do is engage with me in the hope that they get me in the mood that they assume I am in. If the same engagement, the same process in me can create totally different, or me or in Ralph or in Marshall will create totally different experiences based upon our upbringing that they don't know, and probably even based upon whether I stood up on the wrong foot in the morning.
Precisely.
So why do they consider themselves delivering experiences?
Okay, so that's two things. So the first thing is, let's think about jobs. So although you are unique, in fact, all three of you are completely unique in many different ways, we have the same jobs to be done. I want to get the value of the vehicle, of the amount of money left to pay on my car, because I'm thinking about selling it. So if we have that same job to be done, then it doesn't require 99 different ways to be able to deliver that. It just requires the same standardized way, plus some variation to allow the fact that, Thomas, you're in a great mood because it's sunny, and Marshall, you're a bit tired because you've been working so hard, and Ralph, you had Hefeweizen too early, so you're a little bit tired in a different sort of way. Not that that would be the case, but you know what I'm saying? To allow for those differences. So, and this is my point, often we should be personalizing around the job to be done and wrapping data about the individual around that, not trying to create individual unique experiences for everybody, which is just not feasible technically or economically. The only question, there's a bit at the bottom about MVP. I'll try to pick that up very quickly. Steve Blank, the famous entrepreneur, always says there are no facts inside the building, always out there in the marketplace. So you need to get out in the marketplace to see what really works. So no matter how much research you do, no matter how much analytics you do, and I always say you need analytics and customer research together. Analytics will tell you what people did, but it won't tell you why. Customer research will tell you why and what they did elsewhere and what they really wanted to do, but you didn't allow them to do. So if you bring those things together, that's great. That doesn't mean it's going to work in the marketplace. So you've got to get things out quickly into the marketplace so that they're good enough. An MVP, minimal viable products, the things people talk about, from Lean Starter, from Eric Ries, in order to be able to work out what really works. So you can do a lot of testing beforehand if you want to do so, but it's not no substitute for getting things in the market. And I always think in terms of 3 proofs. You need to do a proof of concept. Does it work? Is it actually going to deliver what customers really want? That's relatively easy these days. You can do it in a test environment. Then you need to use a proof of value. So if I do this, will it actually create value for me and for customers? Because if you want great value for both of them, one party is going to leave the conversation, and it might be the customer. That's not a good thing. But also, there's a third thing which often companies miss out on entirely, which is I need to get a proof of use. So it's okay knowing that it works. It's okay knowing that if it did work, if we use it, it's going to create value. I actually need to get people to use it. That means getting staff to adopt new technologies and solutions, often when they don't have the capabilities in place to use those things. But it also means customers changing their habits. And a great example, to go back to the automated technology thing, when I worked for British Airways, my only real job before I became a consultant, I spent some time airside, and I was at Terminal 1 when Terminal 1 was the terminal for UK destinations, when they introduced the new self-check-in kiosks. They had a long queue out, 50 meters long, for people waiting to check in to go to Edinburgh and Heathrow, and nobody using the kiosks because it was like, oh, it's different, it's new, I don't trust it, I'm in a hurry. So the fastest way for me to be is the way you know. So I'm in the queue, waiting to queue. So then they had a great idea, and British was really, really good at this. They put a person next to the machine, and they put a person on the queue saying, if you come with me, I'll show you how to check in. People at the end of the queue in particular, or the middle, I'll show you how to check in online. This person will help you. You'll be in the lounge before the people in front of you even got to check in. So over a period of time, more and more people started to learn how to use the machine. They developed new habits. And research on behavioral change shows that forming habits is the fastest, most effective way to change your behavior. Just behind the COM-B model, just behind Beagle's MAP model, and other models of behavioral change. So by helping people to change their habits, supporting them bit by bit, time and time again, after a few months, the more people in the queue to use the check-in machines, the queue to check in the olden way. So it shows you how you can provide some brilliant new ways to. We talk about three things. We talk about nudges, design, and information. We nudged customers to go and use the check-in machine. They were designed to be easy to use and relatively straightforward. We provided information by having somebody, a member of staff, a check-in staff, showing you how to use it, helping you to do it until you got to become competent yourself. That's a great way to introduce how you run an MVP, to introduce check-in technology. In supermarkets, I think that was there initially. Then to save money, they removed those check-in staff who were watching you doing your check-in and helping you. Now they put them back to avoid fraud and theft. So
Watchmen, yes.
Go around, how things go around in cycles sometimes.
It sounds like a good example of balancing automation and personal touch.
Yes.
What are some smart ways that organizations can balance that?
It's a good question, and of course it varies upon. If I'm thinking about online banking, is a good example. So, I wrote a post about this the other day about the challenge that my wife had trying to get access to her remaining balance to be paid on a vehicle. So she went online, and it said you need to use the portal. So she clicked on the portal link, and it just produced a white screen. It didn't work for her for whatever reason. She tried again, it didn't work. So she rang the switchboard. And the switchboard said, "Tell us your policy number," and she did, and then she passed them to somebody else. So they said, "Tell us your policy number," and then they looked it up and said, "Oh, we found your vehicle, but we can't tell you how much you've got to pay. You have to use the portal or wait for some sale." So my wife said, "But I've already said that I can't use the portal." They didn't listen. So they said, "Well, we'll send you out some snail mail with the remaining balance." 4 days later, my wife made a call on Monday. On Thursday, she got a letter saying how much we had to pay. That information could and should have been given on the telephone. She'd already identified who she was. She would provide information that only account holder would have. There's no real reason I can see, as somebody who designs services in call centers, why they couldn't provide information online. But obviously, they want people to use the portal. So rather than help my wife to use the portal, which didn't work in for any case, they couldn't do that. They didn't have any plan B. The plan B was snail mail. It's almost as though they said to themselves internally, "You know what? If you make it really, really hard to get the details you need, you'll go and find a way to use the portal." I'm afraid not. So fortunately, we're waiting for what it means is my wife, who is quite flexible about these things, she said, "When we come to buy our next vehicle, I'm not going to have it financed through this bank. It's just not worth it. It's like I just don't feel it's why should I do all their work, and why should they be bloody useless at technology?" And this is a bank that is well known for its customer focus, a car company, well known for spending time in the shoes of the customer, and well known for going on Gemba walks where you actually follow the customer's footsteps through their processes and work out how things are going, what we would call ethnography today and outside of this car company's sphere. So they should have known better. But for some strange reason, they didn't.
The cynic in me now says, so means if it's a car company that's well known for standing in the customer's shoes, it can't be a German one.
It isn't a German company, but there are. That's a cultural thing. We don't need to talk about that. When my son was studying for the sports industry, going through his marketing stuff, I read through his marketing book out of interest, and I was flabbergasted as a non-German who speaks German to discover that service had two elements. It had Dienstleistung, the providing of a service. It had human emotional elements, and they were considered to be different things. When I think of going to German shops, often the process is there, providing it's not too early or too late, because then they're closing down and you're just a bloody nuisance. But the human element is missing. We have this concept of Service Wüste Deutschland, so Service Desert Germany. It's a joke, but it often is real as well. Such that when you experience really great service, as my wife did a few years ago at CNA, looking to buy a jacket to turn into a carnival costume for my son, we had an amazingly helpful young man helped us. So helpful. We asked to see the manager, and we praised him for his exceptional service as a consequence. Incidentally, there was a Marks and Spencer's in Cologne 10, 15 years ago. Reputedly, they had to interview 3,000 German staff, all of whom would have qualifications in selling and retailing, to find 30 that they considered customer-oriented enough to be allowed to work in Marks and Spencer's in Cologne. 3,000 staff to find 30 who had enough customer orientation to work on the floor.
I'm still shoveling of the Service Wüste.
That is a good example of what happens when you all you see is dried bones and the wind is blowing the sand around them. I don't know if it's true, but it could easily have been true. In the end, when I would go there, they brought over people from the UK who either spoke a bit of German or trained them in German. And so I had English people working Marks and Sparks in Cologne, providing me a guidance on what to buy and what to fit. And they obviously were busy learning German at the time. It's sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's part of it's a function, I believe, of the order liberalismus, the orderly liberalism that you find as a unique economic model in Germany.
Yeah.
Only Germany has that model. Maybe Austria and Switzerland has it as well.
Yeah.
We are starting to run short of time, and we are contractually obligated to bring up artificial intelligence at least once every broadcast. So I will leave you with this question, Graham. Will AI, specifically Gen AI, help companies make the transition to MEX, and how?
Okay, so I think it's a very simple answer.
Good.
In two parts. Yes, there's no doubt whatsoever that Gen AI will, and other forms of AI, machine learning, will help customers make the transition from a company-centric approach to customer experience to a customer-centric approach where customers control more of the data. But it'll take time, because like all new general-purpose technologies, you need to understand the use cases. You need to learn how to use the technology. It means you need to know a little bit about LLM internals or Gen AI internals to use it properly, know how to use prompt engineering. And also you need to build out those complementary capabilities, those processes and other roles and collaboration and government blah, 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 that you need to be able to get the value out of any technology. So work by Eric Brynjolfsson and others at MIT shows it takes typically 5 years to identify what those capabilities are and to build them out so you can get all the value out of your technology. That's why we have 80% failure rates when new tech is introduced, like we find in Gen AI today. So yes, it will change how we do MEX and CeX more generally. It will take a little bit longer than people imagine. How will it do that? So almost, let's leave machine learning out for the time being. Almost every month, there's a new iteration of one of the popular Gen AI tools, whether it's LLM or now we're talking about agent-based, agentic, so LAMs rather than so not language models, but agent models. So what I think will happen is that we will identify the right use cases where these tools can help customers to make better choices. So, for example, let's say I'm looking to go back to the calorie control diet part, and I'm using the an app for a health insurance company that's gamified their solution, so that you help me, you nudge me, you persuade me to improve my lifestyle, which reduces my costs, reduces their costs as well, of course. So there's no reason why an AI, obviously, Gen AI can be used for creating content. That's relatively low-hanging fruit. It can also be used to identify nudges that are most likely to help me to be able to achieve my goals. Bearing in mind I'm trying to lose a certain amount of weight over a certain bit of time, identify recipes that maybe will help me, that knowing full well what foods I like, that will help me to eat sensibly, and achieve my goals. We'll provide a whole variety of other information or solutions or nudges so that step by step I can work towards my goal. So there's a company called Incuba, run by a gentleman called Trent Rossini in South Africa, and that works providing journey analytics and journey orchestration technology. And they work with a South African provider of health insurance doing exactly what we're talking about. What GenAI and what MEX will do, MEX provide access to contextual data that the company doesn't currently have for certain purposes to help me achieve my goal of losing weight and not having to eat lettuce every day as a consequence. But it also helped me to the GenAI part, using its contextual data, to gamify that journey more efficiently and effectively, not necessarily through points and prizes, but by through intrinsic gamification, helping me make wise choices and providing with tools and information in real time during interactions to help me make good choices about moving towards my goals of losing weight. I'm not trying to lose weight, but that's just an example. So, there are many, many different ways to use GenAI to and it will have a huge impact on both the customer experience using old models of thinking and on the me experience using new ways of thinking driven by the customer that are trying to, and their jobs to be done.
Well said. I think that is a good place to make our mark and leave our audience wanting more, because there's still a lot on the table. So that's the end of today's CRM Convo. Flew by, as they often do.
Yes.
Graham, Dr. G, thank you very much for your time and
My pleasure, as ever.
your insight, of which there is tons. I'm always amazed to sit and listen to your answers. To our audience, thank you for being with us. You can catch a replay of this broadcast or any of our other episodes on the CRM Convos YouTube channel. That's CRM KONVOS. Tune in next week, if you will, when we dive into explainer videos in the customer journey, how to explain things smartly and why it's important. That will be with our guest, Martin Nietzsche. I hope you will be able to join us for that. But until then, thank you for joining us this time, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.